Miss Kika Keith,
Yes.
I am so excited to be talking with you. I think we're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to A Case for Cannabis. And just thanks for making the time.
I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to talk about, because you got a fascinating history, and I want to go back in time, but just to kind of introduce us, who are you? You know, what is your current mission? What are you working on right now in LA? And what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I'm a mother of 3 daughters. And so, you know, that puts me in a very unique position of the example that I got to keep and maintain for my daughters, right? Yes. So that's the framework of everything. But you know, I'm also in Los Angeles, a social equity owner of a cannabis license, as well as, most of all, I believe an activist and an educator.
Nice. Equity cannabis owner, activist, educator, yes. And mother. And mother. Yes, yes. So tell me a little bit, right? We were just talking a little bit about your family's history, how you came to South Central, yes. The roots that and the values that inform you in your work. What are some of those roots?
I've been blessed with a really strong foundation. Yeah. You know, from my grandfather setting forth the tone for me being an entrepreneur, wow. Being the only Black-owned hotel owner in my hometown of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, from my grandmother and my mother's 4 sisters who just instilled love and the fear of God and the love of God, yes. You know, as the strongest foundation that I have. And then my mother and father who, you know, showed me how to stand up, you know, yes. how to fight for truth and justice and how to be a voice to the voiceless. And so, you know, that foundation and that mix is all of who I am.
And prior to entering the cannabis industry and the cannabis space, you were already an entrepreneur. Oh, yeah. Right? So tell me a little bit about your experiences in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I just have always, I'm an independent thinker. I love to create, and I love to create through business, you know, so.
You're my kind of people.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and you know, going back to being God-fearing, I really understand that, you know, I was created in God's image and I got the ability to create anything. Yeah. And so I've always just had fun, that creation part, you know. I had a music academy for inner city youth in South Central LA. And, you know, the other part of it is being creative enough to know how to help others while you're building your business and helping yes. yourself, right? Yes. And that mix is just such a great dance. So, you know, music academy for inner city youth. I had a beverage company. My thought was, wait a minute, being an entrepreneur, it's hard having a nonprofit, right? Where you got to ask people for money. You feel like you're begging. I'm like, wait, I'm doing good. Hold on, I need a for-profit to fund my nonprofit.
That is so true, yeah. But so many folks think that if you're doing something for social impact, yes. It needs to be this 501c3, yes. Not allowing you to actually develop a business model around social impact. Yes. And relying on you to have your hand out yes. to get people to donate to do something impactful that there's actually a market for.
It is a non-sustainable model. True. Right? And that's why usually you see most of the programs in the communities, the good ones that are really impacting, fail, you know, because we don't know that model. You know, we see it in the Salvation Army. I always use Paul Newman as my example. Once I really started looking at, you know, I had 300 kids in the
talking about the salad?
Yes.
Salad dressing?
Yes.
Okay.
I had 300 kids in the music academy. I had over 1,000 children on the waiting list. Now this is a tuition-free, so we had all string instruments. Yeah. We had instructors from the LA Philharmonic coming in and teaching these children. So an amazing program. After 9/11, we lost a lot of our funding. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't get the city to help us out. And so I realized at that point, going back to Paul Newman, mm-hmm. that I needed to have a product. What could I do to create a revenue stream where I did not have to rely on anybody to make sure that I provided what these children in my community needed? And it was then that I asked my mother if I could use her recipe. She had a green drink that healed my daughter of asthma that she brought in. One never intended to go to market. She came in a children's hospital one day. We couldn't leave the hospital. We were there for a week because her oxygen levels weren't high enough. My mom came in with this chlorophyll water, and it was sweetened with honey and lemon. And so it tasted like a lemonade.
That sounds delicious.
It is delicious.
But it's chlorophyll.
But it's chlorophyll. So it's like you're taking a shot of wheatgrass, but it tastes like lemonade, right? Okay. And so she always had in the community, it was just people would come knock on her doors for this remedy. And so I asked her when I was going through this epiphany, I wasn't going to rely on this. I asked her if I could put a label on her drink. And the one thing she said to me is, Kika, as long as you do not compromise the integrity of my recipe, you can use it. And let me tell you, that put a very interesting position on me, the life and my journey of this business, because I couldn't go with the investors that wanted to invest because they all wanted me to compromise. They all wanted me to change.
That's expensive. Those ingredients are expensive.
Yes.
Let's water that down.
Yes, all of that. They wanted me to change the name, everything. And so, it has been those principles that
What's the name of the company?
It's Guerrilla Life.
And where can folks find Guerrilla Life?
Online now at guerrillalife.com. I went inactive on Whole Foods shelves. That's a part of my story, but right now online.
Okay. But it has been distributed and it's been all over.
Oh yeah, it's been all over. I self-distributed to 100 stores. All of the Whole Foods in Southern California moved to national distribution. Right. And all of this without compromising. But in that process, it's challenging to hit that other edge across and over to the point where you have enough money to sustain your family and give back and reinvest into the community.
Oh, yes.
But, this journey that I've taken, and now as it's ended up in cannabis, it created, I feel like I've gotten a PhD in this regulated food and beverage market, just understanding all these elements because I ended up having to do them all myself.
So there's something about self-education that's a part of your story. Yes. There's something about integrity to your roots and your values and your family and God that keeps you going. And then there's something about being able to leverage your experiences. Yes. If you did not have that experience in food and beverage, when you get into cannabis and the regulations and compliance necessary to operate in this space, you might not be able to operate as well. And then that last piece is knowing how to manage and run and operate a business and how to say no to investors, how to not, waver in your commitments. Let's get into the cannabis space a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit, for folks that don't know, about cannabis legislation? Because something that's unique about this industry is if you don't understand policy and legislation, you're never going to survive.
I'm just understanding that dynamic. And that can give folks a lot shorter route, to the years that it took me to figure that out. When I first learned about the social equity program in 2017, California was expected to have recreational use approved at January of 2018.
So wait, are you saying recreation wasn't approved until January of 2018?
Yes.
In my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going on for like 20. This is all just in the last few years.
Oh yeah, because prior to that, it was medicinal. Yeah. So you still saw these dispensaries, right? But you had to have that permit to go in. Yeah, now anybody can walk in. As long as you're 21 and over, anyone can walk in. So it's a completely different industry change, right? And so what I realized in that time, and I didn't realize it until these politicians started coming into South Central LA. From Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer, to Senator Bradford, to the council members in Los Angeles, right? They were all the black ones. Yes. They were all coming into the community. So it's like, okay, you guys, this will be the only opportunity. And this is like, you're seeing Al Sharpton coming up, and these meetings are in community centers, right? This will be the only opportunity that you will have to get in the industry. Get your friends, get your family. You got to be a part of it. Black people have been left out the industry. I mean, they hyped it up. Okay. Right? That I went inactive on the shelves of Whole Foods. I had a national distributor. And I had the opportunity to keep going forward with all these stores or to reel myself back and be an entrepreneur, being the entrepreneur that I am. It was a point where I felt like I was working for Whole Foods. They were getting more money than I was getting.
If you're selling on Amazon, you're selling on,
all of these things I was paying that I wasn't able to feel. I felt like I had a job. So it was a very critical point for me that I heard what they were saying, right? And I understood the implications to our people, especially Black people, who have suffered the most because of the war on drugs. And it has affected our family, and I've watched how it affected our children, and how many children in that music academy came in there and didn't have the proper places to practice because of their household was destroyed and dysfunctional because of the war on drugs in our community. And so I also looked at this as an opportunity for redemption. So I made that decision to go inactive, and I listened to these politicians saying, this is our only time, and if we don't get in now, we'll look back like we did in every other industry and we won't be a part of it.
So I'm very curious, when these politicians came in saying this is the only opportunity to get in this industry, is that true? Is there a window where if you don't get into this industry, folks are going to get priced out? Or was that just drama, right? Because this industry is old. Most of the industry is not regulated. It's the traditional legacy industry. I've heard that like 2/3 of, it's a $20 billion, $25 billion, most of it is still unregulated. Maybe 1/3 is in the formal regulated economy. Is there a window that you got to get in? Or what is your experience?
The power is in the licenses, right? Because the licenses is what can be passed down from generation to generation. I could still have my grandfather's alcohol license, right? If he would have kept it and then passed it down to the next person.
You mean this is like taxi cabs?
Oh, what? So there's going to be a point where there's no more licenses. And then if you don't have the ability to pay the millions of dollars to buy somebody else's license, right? You never can get into the industry.
You're the first person who has explained this because, right, I'm not used to a regulated industry like this and how to navigate it. So there's only going to be a certain amount of licenses. And so it's almost like Bitcoin. At the beginning, if you get that license and if you're able to hold on to it, even if you do nothing with it, that license 50 years from now is going to magnify.
Period. Right? Having that perspective, right, their statements are true. And then there's another advantage that makes that true. Yes, there'll always be somebody selling their license, right? There'll always be this transfer of licenses, and maybe later on they'll add more. But then there's another added value about the timing. And I learned that from my drink. It's being first to market.
First mover.
It's first mover advantage. So there will never be another time like this time to be a part of it. And so then when you have this social equity program that supposedly was presented to voters, right? The reason why Measure M in California passed at such, in Los Angeles in particular, passed at such a high rate, because it had this social equity and community investment part. So people who didn't smoke don't give a damn whether you opening up a dispensary cannabis business. They don't care, which is a bigger part of the population, right? There became a compassion piece in there. Because everybody knows, I don't care what you say about what has happened to inner city communities because of the deliberate war on drugs. Whether you agree with it or not, it happened. It's a fact that cannot be disputed. It's enough videos. We don't got to get and talk about that. It's a real. So as a voter, if you have the opportunity, I'm not really into cannabis. Oh, but wait, they're going to invest back into these communities, into youth programs. Oh, they're going to create an opportunity for those that were arrested and affected to be able to get licensing and be a part of this. Oh yeah, well, I'll vote for that. Right?
Yes.
So that's the trick.
So that's the way it was presented. The equity piece. And Californians love equity. So we're going to say, oh, we're going to help Black and brown communities. We're going to help people who were disproportionately impacted. And we're going to create this. What did you see on the ground when you went through the social equity process in LA in 2018?
I saw that there was nobody going in the community telling them that this opportunity existed. if I didn't just happen to go to that meeting and hear them politicians on that day,
yes,
would I know about it? No, right? So I saw that was the first thing, that the program that was designed for these people, the people didn't know that it existed. And then for the people that did know that it existed, there was nothing to properly prepare them to take advantage of the opportunity.
You need to understand the policy landscape, the compliance landscape.
Yes.
You need to understand business, sales, distribution. You know, I mean, it's a huge process to get it from the growers to manufacturing to retail. And so there was not a lot of infrastructure in place to prepare people to enter into this industry, because there is no real formal education that you can do. You can't just, right, go to college and get a degree, although that is going to change, and we're going to talk about that. So what did you begin to do? Because you're not someone who sees something that's wrong, figures it out, keeps it to yourself, and, you know, ensures that you're successful. What did you begin to do with your community roots in order to address this situation?
Well, I came into this thinking that I had a short window and planned on staying inactive in Whole Foods shelves. It was 7 months that I had to learn everything and then prepare for the licensing opportunity in January of 2018. And once I started seeing that that really wasn't the case, I kind of felt like I was bamboozled. I was like, oh, hell nah. As I'm learning this, I'm about to teach it to as many of our people as possible. And I'm gonna have us so prepared that whenever they do it, I'm gonna just have a group of us ready to be. We're gonna turn the trick back on them. And I always say it was. I realized it was designed to fail. And I had the cheat codes. Because I decided to study and learn the regulations. I knew I had to do it. You had the cheat codes
because you self-studied.
Oh, absolutely.
No one put you up on this.
Oh, no.
You self-studied. And when they said, oh, okay, now let's see who's ready, you showed up with a crew of people ready.
Absolutely. I studied the regs. I read them over and over. I would go to the advisory meetings in Sacramento. I learned what regulations they were changing, what was amended. I was listening to the public comments. I would read the public comments. I go to the city council meetings and neighborhood council meetings. Because
you're doing this because that's what your mom and dad taught you how to do.
I'm doing this because that's what my mother and father showed me how to do.
Nice.
And I did it because I had 3 children that I had to feed, and I believed what these politicians said, and I believed the promises of what was written in that legislation, and I went off the shelves of over 100 plus stores because I thought I had 7 months to get this license.
Why did you have to go off the shelves of Whole Foods?
I decided to totally immerse myself. There was no way that I could run my manufacturing. I'm doing everything in my business now on these 100 shelves. I'm making the drinks. We're packaging them up. We're delivering them. I'm on my hands on doing the business, doing the accounting. It would have been impossible for me to switch industries and opportunities. I didn't have investors, right? I bootstrapped the whole thing. And so I knew I went to Oaksterdam, and I've gotten these different certifications in a short period of time. I knew I had to learn it and learn it well to even make sure that I made the right decision to switch industries, right? And so in that process, as I was learning, I created cliff notes for myself. I started joining up with different community organizations because there were community organizations, California Minority Alliance and the like, that were doing these programs. And I was going in there and sharing what I learned with the people. That's when I realized that's where the game lied.
So what was the outcome of these efforts in LA County? Because I know you were able to make some things shift.
We had to force them to shift. We had to apply pressure in order for them to shift. And fortunately, as I realized how political the game was, because I didn't realize that, right? I knew these politicians were bringing it to us. I knew the legislation existed. I knew I had to learn the business, and I knew I was teaching people, and I was just doing it out of my heart for free. We never charged for classes. We were organizing in community, coffee shops and community centers. But what was happening was I was preparing grassroots lobbyists at the same time.
Yes.
Because I realized we started seeing it. They said it would take 6 months to roll out. Next thing you know, it was a year later. And in Los Angeles, you had to have a property rented and a lease in order to apply if you were social equity.
Yes. So you got a property that had to be compliant in order for you to do the manufacturing so you could distribute the cannabis. And how long did you have to pay this lease before you were actually able to operate and generate revenue?
I had to pay 2.5 years. I'm going on 3 years. I still have my property at $12,000 a month. And I still do not have my license to operate yet. The city, we had to sue the city of Los Angeles in order for me to even get my position that I'm in right now to be able to apply. LA rolled out 2 years after it became legal and people were holding on to properties. They rolled out in September the licensing opportunity for retail.
So if you do not have access to commercial space that is compliant, you can't even play in this game.
No, you can't play in the game.
So that right there is a tremendous barrier written into the legislation. So if we say that part of the legalization of cannabis is to ensure that folks who have been impacted by the war on drugs have access, economic opportunity to the legalization of drugs, that right there, if you're not a landowner, if you don't have commercial real estate, tremendous barrier.
And how could you? Because one of the qualifying pieces to be in social equity is you have to be low income.
How many social equity license holders are there in the state of California? Do you know like what percentage of the license holders?
Good question, but I can tell you this, in places like Los Angeles that have started their application process, there's not one social equity dispensary open.
Compare LA to the Bay, LA to Oakland.
Yes.
Oakland seems to have a better framework in place, seems to have more infrastructure. What do you see?
I see every single social equity program in the nation lacks the dynamics to make them successful.
Ouch.
Yeah. You know, if they created the opportunity early, it was only a few. I think only Oakland might have 4 dispensary licenses, and maybe only a couple of them are open. Oakland's been doing this for the longest, so to not have a fully developed and operating owners, right?
Yeah.
They did this incubator program where they allowed the investor to incubate and give that applicant 1,000 square feet of their facility or their property rent free for 3 years. You're going on year 3 today and they're kicking these people out. These people have to pay for rent now, or they have to move their location right when if you're starting a business, you're not really getting rolling until year 3.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you create these opportunities once again that are set up to design to fail. And though they can tout and say we have licenses, let's ask how many of them are successfully operating? How many of them are profitable?
Yes.
Right? That's the determination of whether a business is successful.
Yeah, this is not charity, this is a business. I've heard something that about 3% of licenses are owned by equity, cannabis owners, black and brown cannabis owners.
Period.
Period.
Just social equity.
Yeah.
Black. Period. Across the country.
So, all right, so we're getting into the actual issues, right?
Yes.
Because someone's going to make a lot of money in this industry. This is, I've been told, is the fastest growing workforce in the country, right? Right now, there's 11 states that have legalized recreational cannabis. 34 states legalized medicinal cannabis. This is just going to keep growing. Yes. The question is, who's going to have access to this industry? What is your campaign about? What are you really trying to get changed? Because you're not just talking about Oakland, you're a technical assistance advisor to the city of Oakland. Mm-hmm. You're working with governments and helping people roll out these programs. Yes. So what is your campaign about? What are you trying to influence cities to do?
My campaign is about the people.
Yeah.
And I don't really think I'm over trying to convince the city about what they should do.
Yeah.
If I look at the city of LA, they still don't have a technical assistance program 3 years later. And millions of dollars later, they can't even say they're not funded or money isn't available. And so to me, there just has to be a point, and we should just look at, history as a minority people. If we sit around and wait on the government to do it, we will always be dependent on the government to do it.
Yes.
And so my appeal is to the community. My appeal is to the non-politicians, right?
So we got the community
owners.
right here,
Yes.
right? We're trying to reach out to people who want to get into the industry, people who want to shape this. How can they get involved? What should they be doing? Self-study?
Period.
Or what else? All right.
It starts there. You have to be motivated enough to know that this is something that even if you did not want to be in the cannabis industry, you don't like cannabis, this is a commodity. So if we just look at it from that perspective, and this is a commodity that rests on the backs of people who have been incarcerated, killed, murdered, families destroyed about it. So there is also a part about the social justice side that has to be. So then for all of those humanitarians out there, this is something and a cause worth fighting for, to be a part of not only the license and the ownership side, but the reinvestment back into the communities that were affected by the war on drugs. You know how much tax dollars these governments are getting, and now because of COVID, they're saying, oh, well, let's legalize it because we need to make that deficit up, and we can do it through cannabis. But the deficit first should be made up back into the community that suffered because of that. And as a community and as humanitarians, right, that's a stance that we can start to make and demand. While y'all worried about all the politics, we want to see some rebuilding of our communities, right? I'm not getting a license. I want to make sure that money is going to these communities.
I've been told the taxation is one of the biggest barriers in this industry because there's like 6 or 7 different layers of taxation. And once this gets federalized and the federal government passes the MORE Act, whatever it chooses to do, that's going to be a whole nother level of regulation and taxation. And there's very low margins, right? Once you take out all these taxes. But if the taxation, if that revenue has to go back into the community, that would be a little bit easier to swallow.
Absolutely, but that's not given, because there's a million things, including police enforcement, where that money is going to go to. So it's not to the community that stands up and says, on top of that, money should be going to the community college education, because there'll only be so many owners, right? But the workforce that could be developed at living wage jobs, right? The workforce development and all of these new businesses that is growing by leaps and bounds, right? Where is the money for education to make sure that our people get a part of this new job force that's being created, right?
Well, that's what this our campaign, Case for Cannabis, is all about. There's going to be tremendous opportunities in this industry. You brought up community colleges. How do we help people move from self-education to actually the community colleges preparing people for this workforce? What role should the community colleges play?
Immediately start developing curriculum to support the industry, period. And working with the folks in the industry to create that curriculum. It's very simple. And being able to translate existing curriculum to this industry. That's the benefit or that I have from being in the food and beverage industry. I had to learn quality assurance and compliance. Those same steps are the same steps I have to do over here on the cannabis side. Instead of it being chlorophyll, it's weed that I'm moving, right? But I had to learn those dynamics. I had to learn project management. I had to learn business. I had to learn finance. All of those things are transferable skills. But you have to let that community member know there's so much added value, and everybody has a chance right now to be first to market. Whether you're first to market in your entry-level job, whether you're first to market in the management jobs, whether you're first to market in the cultivation and the distribution and the testing side, all of these skills that you're having, if you're teaching biology and all these things, are all transferable to industry-specific jobs and ownership opportunities. And that shift has not happened. So now you have this opportunity for these low-income community members that have been affected by the war on drugs to get this golden ticket to be license holders, but there's nowhere where they can prepare the education. These 2.5 years, people could have had degrees that by the time their stores did open, they were fully prepared.
So the community colleges need to do something which is challenging for them. They need to think ahead and be innovative, and instead of lagging behind changes in the economy, they have to seed this future workforce. Right? Because we don't know if the federal legislation is going to be legalized this year, next year. Kamala Harris said that this is part of what the Biden administration is going to do, right? The MORE Act passed. This is coming. We're at the end of prohibition. You can't wait until prohibition is over and all the laws are set and then develop your programs.
Look, start viewing cannabis as a commodity, as a consumer product.
Tobacco.
It's a consumer product.
Sugar.
It is a consumer product. Right? And so if you lose that stigma of it, right? And then you just start teaching and training according to that, you're not touching the flower. You're just preparing people to be able to participate in the workforce or as an entrepreneur.
Kika, we could talk all day because I'm so interested in so many facets of this, from the social justice side to the economic opportunity side to understanding policy and how that's navigated. But something else I want to talk about is just the health and wellness, the relationship between health and wellness and cannabis. And I think it's really fascinating that you started a chlorophyll healthy drink company, and now you're getting into social equity cannabis. What's the relationship between health and wellness and cannabis?
Well, my parents always told me everything you need comes from this earth. And that was the whole premise behind the drink and the chlorophyll water. And it is the whole premises behind cannabis, right? And that's the part that is really important and that I've had to even do in order to get senior citizens to come out on the front line with this. Is to start breaking down to them the benefits of cannabis and the endocannabinoid system and how it works. And it's not just about sitting there smoking a joint, right? How it can help with your blood pressure and your arthritis and your knees and your stiffness. And once you started breaking down those stigmas and understanding the power of the plant itself, right? Not the trap shops on the corner, but the power of this plant. All of a sudden, those became my best advocates. And speaking about the importance of making sure that we had...
My mother-in-law puts this on. She's an old Indian woman. She is not, never used cannabis in her life. She uses it. It helps with her arthritis. My wife's wrist hurts from being on the computer.
That's right.
Cannabis helps.
That's right.
CBD.
That's right. Without side effects. And so, that's why it has been an easy transition. And that's why I've been so passionate to make sure that we don't get left. Our communities don't get left out of this, as we're so focused on policy and we're so focused on legislation and the economics. We have lost the heart and the reason why we're actually here. And it is about creating more opportunities and access. Like you have these food deserts in our communities. It's the same thing. How do we have proper education and provide this plant as a source of healing in our communities? And we know we suffer from post-traumatic slave disorder, all those things, all the traumas that we've witnessed. And this is a source of some healing. And so we can't lose sight of all that as we get involved in all the stigmas.
The culture of cannabis, which is very strong here in the Bay Area, very strong in LA, very strong in certain communities. As this does get commodified, and it goes mainstream. So one of your issues is around how do we preserve the culture and the healing aspect and not have it get too commercialized or to lose its integrity.
And that's the importance of the social equity program. Because the people who should be awarded these opportunities will give back to their community, and they care for their community enough that if they travel this road to get the licenses, they understand what they also need to do. And if you have people that are not from our community coming with it, it becomes just a commodity. And it does become just about the numbers, and their dollars leave from our communities and it goes back to theirs. And so the importance of preserving this legacy and then being able to provide the education information to our community and access to the healing benefits of this is undeniable.
All right. Well, I mean, it's definitely clear that you're on the path.
Yes.
It's definitely clear that you're not going to stop. You're going to keep moving, but you're going to bring as many people along with you as possible.
Yeah.
Just let's end with, where are you going next? Like in 2021, 2022, what's on the horizon for you? And what do you hope is on the horizon for this social equity cannabis movement?
Yeah, well, in response to what we were seeing in Los Angeles, we formed the Social Equity Owners and Workers Association. And we are particularly interested in oversight of these institutions, oversight of these corporations that are coming into our communities, touting social equity, and ensuring that there is some responsibility and that they're doing what they say they're going to do. And it's run by social equity applicants and owners and workers. And so the goal is to be able to create a resources and referral information, a pipeline of information and support. So our goal is to move that through California and then nationally into communities. And then for myself is to open up these businesses, because I like to stay one step ahead so I can share information, right? There's one thing, we're all in this pre-operation mode, right? Trying to get the license. But what happens once we get our doors open? And how will these big corporations try to shut us out? And what information could be shared to make sure that those that are behind me, that not only do we open our doors, but we remain open and we can pass our licenses down. And even if it doesn't come to our children, that there are others in our communities that we can transfer these licenses to and keep that. That is important. That is how America was built. And that's what, I really see in purpose for, to continue to share, and so that our paths aren't so difficult.
I love the long game that you're playing.
Yes.
It's about the generations who came before you.
Yes.
It's about the generations that are to come.
Yes.
I think that you're doing the right work, and you're the right person to do it. I'm very proud of what you're doing.
I appreciate that.
So let's stay connected.
Yes,
and let's win.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.